Which games are the best bets of week 1 this NFL season? What's going on, football fans and gridiron gamblers out there? It's Mitch back with a fresh, new NFL best bets video. These are my favorite spreads for week 1 of the 2024 NFL season. We're in early July, but it's never too early. People have been betting on these spreads since they've come out. But before training camp, before preseason, before the hype of fantasy football truly takes hold, before the hype of Hard Knocks and every other storyline that takes place throughout training camp, we have an advantage at our fingertips. Early spreads that the public hasn't already attacked. And I like to use my edge and my expertise of studying these rosters, these teams throughout free agency, throughout the draft, each and every day of the offseason. That is what I do. So I love week 1 because I often can find some really great gems and the undervalued teams that maybe Vegas hasn't quite caught on to yet. And certainly the public has not caught on to yet. So if that sounds good, spike the like button for weekly NFL best bets all season long. Subscribe, NFL weekly picks each and every week on the BLV. My favorite video to make each and every week. I'm so excited for 2024. Let's get to 8 games, half the schedule for week 1, essentially, that I really like, and the games that in July right now are really catching my interest. So these spreads will change depending on when you're watching this video throughout the summer. So keep that in mind. But I definitely would take a look if you are heavily invested on winning some money betting the NFL in 2024. So let's start off. We're just going to go in the order of the schedule, beginning with the New England Patriots and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I wanted to start with the game that involves my team first, so that if you don't like to bet on my team, because I understand there might be some bias here, obviously, but this is just like, you could put any 2 teams in this graphic, and this is really the fundamental thing about the NFL. It's week 1 of the NFL season. You could put any 2 teams in this graphic, and I would bet this game. I would bet the 9.5 no matter what it said on this graphic. I don't care if it's the 2007 Patriots against the 2004 Cincinnati Bengals. I really do not care, right? To me, 9.5 points, especially in this NFL, the modern 2024 NFL, where every team from 1 to 32 is so tight at the beginning of the year, and there's a lack of practice, there's a lack of contact, there's a lack of potentially guys that are in shape. There's so many factors early in an NFL calendar. Joe Burrow not playing actual football for so long. Like, so many factors going into this game for why you would want to back the Patriots with 9.5 points in the first week of the season. First of all, I think the Patriots are slept on to some degree. I do think, let's just think about it. We could go through an arc here throughout the offseason where New England could actually surprise because, hey, maybe Drake May becomes the starter. Maybe Drake May is really darn good early in his career and he blows up the preseason. This number would instantly fall to probably like 7.5. Like, the number is going to dip if Drake May shows goods in the preseason, because if he starts, people are now going to say, well, Jacoby, we kind of knew what he was. People are not very high on him, although I do think, Jacoby, the last couple of times he started, whether it be in Washington or in Cleveland in previous seasons, he actually has been decent, right? Better than his career in Miami or Indianapolis or all that. And this is the same Cleveland offense, same coordinator, same play caller that he once had in Cleveland, right? Not Stefanski calling plays, but essentially the same coordinator, same quarterback coach, that sort of deal. So it's a similar offense for Brissett, or you've got potentially a rookie that is setting the preseason on fire, because the Patriots probably don't want to start May unless he's clearly the better option, which could happen in my opinion because I think he's that talented. Now, on top of that situation with the quarterbacks, you have the rust of the Bengals that could be a factor in terms of Joe Burrow, right? Like, Burrow has not played NFL action. He will not be hit in the offseason. They're going to be ultra conservative. He's probably not going to play much in the preseason. There's going to be little reason for the Bengals to risk it given what happened last year. That means he's likely going to start slow. And on top of that, Burrow is taking on arguably the best defense in the league. Like, by the end of last year, the Patriots finished number 1 in EPA allowed in the NFL from weeks 10 to 18 without their 2 best players, Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon. So this is a top 5 defense pretty much anywhere you slice it, in any way you slice it. So yes, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, I like the offensive line of the Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to be an elite team that goes on to be in contention. But remember, the Bengals are a team that typically do sort of start a little bit slower, and they tend to gain traction near the end of the year. That's at least what we've seen with Joe Burrow-led teams. Even last year, Burrow was really on fire right before he got injured, if you might recall. So, to me, the Bengals, I think they're going to be in for a fight because the Patriots' defense is going to make this competitive. Typically, defense is more in their bag early in a season because offenses, it involves more rhythm, play calling, kind of like X's, O's, and like details and timing and all those things. So for me, I look at a Bengals offense that, yes, is potent on paper, but I think could struggle a little bit against a really good pass rushing team with Judon and Uche and Barmore and Wise and these guys coming at Burrow. On top of that, the Bengals don't have the most dynamic rushing attack. I think they're going to struggle to run the ball against one of the better run defenses from a year ago in New England. And the Patriots, with Gonzalez, potentially have a number 1 corner that could match up with Jamar Chase. They've got a plethora of DBs like Duggar, Peppers, Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones. And even a couple years ago, the Patriots played the Bengals. Bengals were blowing them out, and then the Patriots came right back. They nearly won that game. They probably could have won that game in the end. So ultimately, I think this is probably going to be like that sneaky 1-score game where the Bengals are supposed to blow out the Patriots, but I just don't think the defense of New England is going to allow that. And I think the Bengals are not going to be playing their peak football. I think they're going to have a tough time getting settled and playing in rhythm and all those things. So it's 9.5 points. It's too many points in the first week of the season for a team that has new elements on their defense, new elements on the offensive line, quarterback that hasn't played in a long time. There's a lot of factors here why I believe New England could keep this one extremely competitive. I'm not saying they're going to win. I do believe the Bengals will win, but I wouldn't be shocked if this game was closer than people expect. So that's the first game that really catches my eye, mostly due to just the number, but there are matchup things, including the Patriots defense really being probably underrated, but honestly just very good. Then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons. I like the Steelers catching points here on the road at Atlanta. Now, I typically would not like the Steelers in a road setting, right? Like in Atlanta, Dome, Kirk Cousins, a lot of hype involved there. Fan base in Atlanta should be pretty pumped. The atmosphere will be great. But what I love about this matchup is a couple things. First of all, I think that Cousins is a complete wild card. Like, we don't really know how good Cousins is going to be. I'm not sure how much we're going to see him in the preseason. I'm not sure how much they're going to risk his injury or him, kind of injuring that Achilles, right? This is an Achilles tear. This is not even an ACL. This is not a shoulder injury, right? This is an Achilles, a serious NFL injury that we've rarely seen quarterbacks come back from and be successful. So to me, that's a big deal. Secondly, the former head coach of the Falcons is now the offensive coordinator of the Steelers, Arthur Smith. There is a revenge element here returning to Atlanta. This was not a good say goodbye to Arthur Smith, who many Falcons fans did not like and just overall did not have the greatest finish there in Atlanta. And to me, I could see him bringing a much better offense to the Steelers this year. I think their run game is going to be much better with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, with a new offensive line, right? Multiple young players at tackle. You've got a new center potentially, and then 2 guards that are professionals, good players in Daniels and Sayamalu. And then you've got Jones, and they spent on the kid from Washington at the other tackle spot. So I think one of the more slept on offensive lines. I think the Steelers have the pass rush to get after Kirk Cousins. I don't think that Bijan's going to just be able to run all over them. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward all healthy to begin the year. Pat Queen will be involved. Minka will be healthy. When the Steelers defense is healthy, they're going to be one of the tops in the league, and they should be healthy to start the year. You've got a guy like Joey Porter Jr., who's going to be a really good matchup for Drake London, being that he's tall, he's long, he's got some speed to him, where he's not too small, he's physical, right? He's a great size and stature to take on Drake London on the outside, so that's a good matchup. You've got George Pickens on the outside with Russell Wilson, the type of receiver that I think Russ really jives with and gels with really well. And Russell Wilson is going to have a point to prove in the city that I believe his wife is from, if I'm not mistaken, in Atlanta with Sierra. So there's going to be some things there in terms of Sierra and Russell Wilson, I believe. And I just think that Russell Wilson might be a little bit slept on coming into this game against an injured, coming back from injury Kirk Cousins. I think a lot of people would say Cousins is a superior quarterback, but I wouldn't be shocked against the weaker defense if Russ outplayed Cousins in this spot. I just think he's going to be more comfortable to begin the year in this location. Plus, you've got Mike Tomlin and the edge that exists for Mike Tomlin in week 1 against a rookie coaching staff. So there's many elements here that I like about the Steelers. Classically an underrated team. I think right now an underrated Steeler roster, and I think a slightly overrated Falcon roster, given that mostly their defense is one of the kind of bottom units in terms of talent in the league, in my opinion. They don't have a potent pass rush. Their run defense is average. Their overall secondary depth is pretty mid. So to me, the Falcons, I just think, are a little bit overrated. I have the Steelers ahead of the Falcons in my power rankings. That's even just a simple reason why I would take the Steelers here. The Carolina Panthers catching 5 points at the New Orleans Saints. This is one of those games that many people are going to say, Mitch, you're insane for taking the Carolina Panthers in any game and betting on the Carolina Panthers. They were the worst team in the NFL last year. They suck. They're going to be the worst team this year. But this is the thing about betting. Sometimes, especially early in the year, you have to bet ugly games that nobody wants to bet. I don't think there's a single human that wants to bet on the Carolina Panthers in week 1. But catching 5 points in a divisional matchup against a pretty average roster in the New Orleans Saints, with an improved Carolina team, with a new coach in Dave Canales, I'm taking the Panthers. I think this will be a 1-score game. Now, the Saints should win by like a field goal, but 5 points is simply inflating their value. The Saints are not a great team. Derek Carr is not a great quarterback. The offensive line, Ryan Ramczyk, is not even certain to be playing in this game. They have a rookie left tackle who's more of a right tackle that they think is going to play left tackle. I think running game is pretty putrid, despite having Alvin Kamara. And they really have one receiver in Chris Olave who's going to have a tough time. His hands will be full with J.C. Horn, who's a really good corner to match up with him. So I look at Carolina and I say, they got an offensive line now. Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis. If Aquanu can play a little bit better and they can get solid center play, they should have great protection and a good, strong running game. They're going to lean on the running game, have a lot of play action, easy throws for Bryce Young. They're not going to make anything too difficult. Deontay Johnson is the type of receiver that does thrive against man coverage if the Saints want to try to press him and do some things and play man coverage there. You've got Adam Thielen in the slot to be able to beat zone coverage. And you've, of course, got the rookie Xavier Legette that at any time could make a huge play down the field. So to me, I look at Carolina, I just think they're a little bit underrated overall in terms of comparison to the Saints. I don't see the Saints as 5 points better than really any team in the league, especially a divisional team. And I'm expecting improved offense, improved scheme. I think they're going to have a better overall vision for what Bryce can do well and not do well. I think they're going to work that out throughout the offseason. So I think the Panthers will sneak up on the Saints here and make this one pretty competitive overall. The Minnesota Vikings at the New York Giants is my next pick. I would take the Vikings in a pick'em situation. This spread not too long ago was the Vikings, I believe, by 2.5, if I'm not mistaken. But picking a Sam Darnold-led Vikings team to go to the Giants and to beat New York by a field goal is a bit dicey. But overall, I would take the Vikings. I think they're the better roster. I think coach for coach, they're probably better, although I do like the Giants coaching staff as well. And I would say that the Vikings have the better offensive line by a long shot. I think the Vikings have the better defense. And despite not having home field, I think the quarterbacks are pretty even. Like, they're both athletes, Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, that don't have much of a brain. I think Darnold will actually be a better player this year than Daniel Jones. I wouldn't be shocked. I think Sam Darnold is just as talented, if not more. I think he's got more elusiveness in his bag. I think he's got more arm angles, more platforms to throw from. I think he is erratic, but so is Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is very structured, and I think this is the type of defense to give him a lot of issues because Brian Flores is a blitzing machine. He's known from coming from all angles, and he's going to have all this time to prepare for Daniel Jones and an absolutely terrible offensive line. So he's going to find lanes and ways to absolutely stress a new offensive line with a new coach, different players in different spots. Like, this is not a good matchup. Despite not being the Kirk Cousins Vikings with a better, more solidified veteran quarterback, they're going to have Aaron Jones in the backfield healthy. They're going to have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. They might not have TJ Hawkinson, but they're going to have their two tackles, Darisaw and O'Neal. They're going to be able to pass protect on the road. I'm not too worried about that. They're going to be able to run the ball just a little bit. And I think Darnold off play action. I mean, who's covering Justin Jefferson in this game? Who's covering Jordan Addison in this game? The Giants do not have corners to play one-on-one on islands. And again, like, Flores is going to feast against an offensive line that's taking to new coaching and has new elements and has new tackle and a new guard and like so many different things here. They don't have Saquon anymore. They've got a rookie receiver they have to rely on to make all their plays. Like, to me, the Vikings are a class above the Giants. And despite it being on the road, this is a Sam Darnold return to New York that just feels like he'll win this game. So to me, I like the Vikings a lot the more that I think about this game. The Las Vegas Raiders at the Chargers, getting 3 in the hook. This is just a nice little division game that I think a lot of people are going to be hyped about Harbaugh, but I think this is a perfect time to fade him because I think the Raiders are the more talented roster. Remember that game that they played late last year? I understand that was kind of Brandon Staley's last hurrah, and it was Easton Stick, a literal hockey stick, playing quarterback. So it's not going to be like 65-0 or whatever it was, but the Raiders are a more talented roster, in my opinion. Do the Chargers have a better quarterback? Absolutely. But the Chargers have a new head coach. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new defensive scheme. So overall, they have a lot changing. The Raiders have a lot of carryover. They are changing their offensive coordinator, but their defense is the same. Their head coach will be the same in Antonio Pierce, the guy that took over last year for Josh McDaniels. So I look at this and I expect Gardner Minshew to be the quarterback. If Gardner Minshew is not the quarterback, it's going to be a quarterback that already is familiar with the rest of the team and Aiden O'Connell. So either way, I'm not too uncomfortable. But Gardner Minshew, I trust because he's a veteran. He's played in many systems. He'll be ready to go in week 1. The offensive line, I think, is a bit underrated in terms of what they've done this offseason, adding a guy like Jackson Powers-Johnson in the draft, having a stud left tackle in Colton Miller that can go toe-to-toe with Boza or Mack. And to me, like, the Raiders O-line, they run the ball really well. The Chargers are a pretty pedestrian run defense. If not pedestrian, might be being nice. Like, putrid might be a better word. And Zamir White could go off for 120 yards. And if the Raiders are able to run the ball, that's the way they want to play, right? That is how they want to play. The Chargers are going to want to try to run the ball a bit in this game to establish their new identity. But the Raiders are good against the run, especially after adding one of the best run defenders in football in Christian Wilkins, along with Max Crosby. Plus, they've got pass rushers to test the young tackle in their first round pick out of Notre Dame in Joe Alt, like Kuntz and Crosby coming off the edge. That's going to be tough from day one. It will probably be Crosby, right, if Alt is playing right tackle. So that is a nightmare matchup. Then you've got Brock Bowers working against terrible linebackers from the Chargers. You've got, right, receivers like Adams and Myers taking on a pretty mediocre secondary for the Chargers. Overall, even the discrepancy in quarterback, I still feel like the Raiders match up extremely well with the Chargers. This is a stadium that they often get a ton of fans at. This is, Los Angeles. This is ultimately the Raiders city still, in my opinion. So to me, the Raiders, I think their talent could really win them this game, and their matchup could win them this game in week 1. Would I be shocked if the Chargers won because they have the better quarterback and they have the better coach? I wouldn't be shocked, but would you be shocked if this game ended 20-17 and the Chargers won and you still covered? I wouldn't. So to me, getting the hook here is absolutely massive in a divisional matchup. The Tennessee Titans at the Chicago Bears. This is another one that feels inflated. I would take the Titans plus 4.5, despite it being on the road. And the Bears do have a solid home field in terms of Soldier Field. Is that even what it's called anymore? I don't know, but that's how I know it. But to me, like, Caleb Williams, he's going to get so much hype, especially playing against a team that he's expected to beat. You've got Keenan Allen, you've got Rome Odunze, you've got DJ Moore, great weapons. DeAndre Swift was added, Cole Kmet, all that stuff, right? But the Tennessee Titans did their thing as well this offseason. Like, let's not forget, they added a new left tackle out of the draft in J.C. Latham, who should be pro-ready. They added a top 10 center in Cushenberry. They have a good left guard in Peter Skoronski. Their really only weakness is right tackle. So if Montez Sweat is rushing from the right, that won't be too much of an issue. But he's rushing from the left, might be a little bit of an issue. But the Bears don't have a potent four-man rush. Other than Sweat, they don't have much to really deal with, which means that they could probably slide protection towards Sweat's side. And the Titans' offensive line, with Callahan now coaching it, should be greatly improved. The run game of the Titans, I think, is going to be a lot better than people expect, thanks to the offensive line coaching, but then the complement of Pollard and Spears. On top of that, Will Levis is, in his own right, a bit of a rookie, but he's also really talented. This guy can throw the football, he can really rip the ball, and he's got a ton of receivers to throw to. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, two comfortable veterans that should be able to make plays down the field, even against the Bears secondary. They've got an athletic tight end who can make yards after catch, and Tyler Boyd over the middle, who could be a security blanket that will already know the offense coming from the Bengals, and Callahan being the new offensive coordinator and head coach for Tennessee. Defensively, Tennessee is nothing special, but they do have corners that actually can cover the Bears. It's one of the rare teams that you look at and you say, well, Snead can take on DJ Moore, Awuzie can take on Rome Odunze, and McCreary could match up with Keenan Allen. And overall, that's not bad matchups across the board. On top of that, Jeff Simmons and Harold Landry will give this offensive line that could be a bit shaky early in the year, and Caleb Williams holding on the ball, a couple issues, right? Like, Caleb's a young player. He's never going to really have that NFL experience at that level of that speed. So he's probably going to have to take a little time to get some feet under him and get, his feet wet a little bit. So to me, I like Tennessee here with the 4.5, because this is more of a game to me that could be 50-50 than I think the odds are implying here. So that's why I like 4.5 here. The Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Bucks. I would take the home team, the Bucks, minus 3.5. I think the Commanders are arguably the worst team in the NFL and arguably the worst roster in the NFL. They don't have much of a pass rush, and I think they're outgunned on the offensive line front and the defensive line front from Tampa Bay. I think that Tampa's offensive line is going to be greatly improved thanks to their new rookie center, Graham Barton. I like their tackle duo quite a bit, especially Tristan Wirfs. And I think Baker Mayfield is the substantially better quarterback in this game against rookie Jaden Daniels, who I expect to struggle against Todd Bowles, who is a nightmare for young quarterbacks because he brings pressure from all angles. He's dropping people left. He's blitzing people right. He's dropping the D tackle, Vita Vea, guy coming right up the A gap in Levante David. You don't really know where that pressure is coming from. He's really good against mobile quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts in the past. He'll give Jaden Daniels a lot of problems. Like, Daniels plays a lot like Hurts, where he's pocket or he's scramble. He's not really an extender of plays. He's a runner or he's a thrower. And that's going to be a problem against Tampa, like I said. I think the Bucks have, really good, like, middle of the field tacklers. You talk about Whitehead, Winfield, David. You talk about the interior rush they could get with Vita Vea and also Cansey against a smaller type of quarterback. You've got, I think, just overall, like, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin against one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. Like, that is a terrible matchup. So to me, I just think Tampa is way better than the Commanders, and they're at home, and this is not a good matchup on paper for them in the first ever game of the Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels era. This is not a good matchup. So to me, I like the Bucs quite a bit. And the final game I would consider betting for week 1 is the 49ers -5.5 over the Jets. I do like the Jets, and I think they'll be a good team this year, but playing on the road in the West Coast, when you're going from the East to the West, against the 49ers in a primetime setting on Monday night, after the Niners are coming off a Monday night, or they're coming off, I should say, a Super Bowl loss, and they want to get that, taste out of their mouths for a new, fresh season. They're largely the same team with very similar players on offense and defense. They have very little to deal with in terms of chemistry and understanding of scheme and system. There's a few players here and there that will have to get caught up to speed really on defense, maybe like Leonard Floyd or Malik Collins or potentially one of their corners. But overall, like, the Niners are going to have everybody that is really there from the Super Bowl. Their whole offense is intact. They're going to be a well-oiled machine. Now, the Jets do have an excellent defense that could keep this one competitive. But when you're talking about the Niners offense, this is Niners at home, not in New York, in perfect conditions in early September with a potent run game that could keep them balanced, that Kyle Shanahan has all offseason to prepare for his buddy's defense that he knows better than maybe his buddy does. Right? This is Shanahan who purposely hired Robert Saleh because he was impressed with Robert Saleh's defense out of Seattle, and he wanted that similar approach and similar defense. And this is Shanahan, right? Like, he studies these defenses better than anybody. He finds holes. Imagine, remember last year when they attacked and they destroyed the Steelers in Pittsburgh? Now imagine this against the Jets, a team that offensively, they've got a disaster class of an offensive coordinator in Hackett. They've got an old quarterback coming off an Achilles that's going to be kind of nervous, going to have jitters. He's playing his hometown team that he never does well against. It's on Monday Night Football, and I just don't think he's going to be comfortable against Nick Bosa with this offensive line. I don't think he's going to be comfortable facing the Niners and that defense and the speed of that defense and Fred Warner in the middle and Hufanga back flying around. So to me, the Niners just feel like a team that in week 1 is prepared to play. They're going to be ready to go. They're going to be riled up. And you do not want to get them in a Monday Night Football primetime type of setting. So this was just made for the Jets to lose this game. I don't really understand why they put this in this spot in week 1. But man, I mean, scene of the crime type stuff for Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a tough test in week 1. Those are my favorite picks and favorite spreads of week 1 early. We're sitting here July the 2nd recording this, and I feel like I would bet on all those games. I don't know about you, but let me know in the comments. Let me know your favorite pick of week number 1 so far. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you in the next video. It's Mitch. Deuces.